The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. Thus spoke the shepherd King David, weaving a promise of comfort and courage that has echoed through millennia. In this opening journey, we stand at the threshold of ancient wells of faith, where gentle green pastures meet roaring rivers, and where hearts, weary from life's storms, are renewed in the stillness of divine presence. Today, we embark on a voyage through sacred poetry, Psalm 23's tender assurance, Psalm 40x's triumphant refuge, and Psalm 91's steadfast shelter, guided by a narrator's voice that seeks to awaken the spirit and steady the soul. We begin in a hush before dawn, when the world holds its breath and the first light steals over rolling hills. Imagine a shepherd leading his flock across dew-laden fields, each blade of grass glistening like a promise. In that quiet moment, the words emerge, "The Lord is our shepherd. We need nothing more." The air itself seems to carry this truth, settling into every anxious thought and frayed nerve. Such is the power of those ancient verses, tender as a lullaby, yet unshakable as a fortress. To hear them aloud is to feel the earth beneath your feet, firm and unchanging, as you place your trust in one who knows every path. As the psalm unfolds, the narrative carries us beside still waters, their surface mirroring skies of hope. Here the soul finds its rest, as a weary traveler pauses on a sunlit bank. We sense the gentle hand guiding us, not with a heavy yoke, but with shepherd's staff, steadfast and reassuring. Though shadows gather on the horizon and dark valleys beckon with unknown fears, the voice of assurance whispers that we shall fear no evil. For the presence that goes before us is the same that has calmed storms and raised the fallen. We walk on, comforted by the promise that goodness and mercy will pursue us, like the soft bleating of lambs returning home. From these pastoral scenes, our journey shifts to the mighty upheaval of creation itself. Picture the earth trembling, mountains tumbling into restless seas, and waters roaring with untamed power. Yet in the heart of chaos lies a city of peace, its foundations rooted in the living streams of God's presence. This is a vision of Psalm 46, where our refuge and strength stand unwavering amid the world's upheaval. Here, the divine does not stand aloof, but dwells within the very city that fears no fall. A gentle yet commanding voice bids us to be still, to recognize the God who will be exalted among the nations, whose very word can silence war and shatter weapons. We find ourselves drawn into that sanctuary, walls of praise rising around us, carrying the echoes of ancient songs. Even when nations rage and kingdoms crumble, the gates of that holy city remain secure. In our imagination, we walk its wide avenues, listening for the distant hum of worship and the gentle flow of the river that brings life wherever it goes. This is no distant utopia, but a present reality, a refuge that invites us to lay down burdens and lift our eyes to the horizon of hope. And so our path carries us onward into the shadowed forest of fear, where arrows fly unseen and unseen enemies lie in wait. Yet, as we step beneath the shelter of the Most High, a canopy of feathers unfolds above us. We find rest in the shadow of the Almighty, knowing that no ravenous snare can claim us, no pestilence can steal our peace. Under this canopy, faithfulness becomes our shield, deflecting the terror of night and the arrow by day. 1,000 may fall at our side, 10,000 at our right hand. Yet we behold the downfall of wickedness without dread. For to declare the Lord as our refuge is to reside in a fortress beyond the reach of harm. In these psalms we witness the seamless tapestry of divine care, the shepherd's gentle guidance, the fortress's steadfast walls, the refuge's protective wings. Each image builds upon the last, carrying the listener deeper into the heart of trust. As our introduction draws to its close, the breath of anticipation stirs us toward the next chapter, a space where the shepherd's table is laid in the presence of the enemy, where oil anoints and cups overflow, and where the voice that commands angels becomes our own lifeline. Thus, we stand poised on the brink of the narrative's unfolding, hearts softened by the psalmist's ancient melody. The story we tell is more than words upon a page. It is an invitation to dwell in a love that surpasses understanding, to rest in fields of promise, to stand unshaken in the fortress of faith. In the next passage, we will follow the shepherd's rod and staff, explore the table set amidst adversity, and linger at the waters where our souls find renewal. And as the journey unfolds, may each word draw us closer to the one who leads us, guides us, and remains with us forever. As the morning sun spills gold across the pasture, we return to that familiar path where our shepherd's footsteps have already tread. He leads us to a verdant meadow, each blade of grass a testament to renewal, each flower a verse of grace. In this place of abundance, we learn that rest is not mere idleness, but the fertile silence where our souls are tended. As we lie down in those green pastures, we feel the weight of our burdens slide away, carried off by the gentle breath of creation itself. Here, the quiet speaks louder than any plea, inviting our hearts to trust in provision far greater than we can imagine. Continuing along the winding trail, we come to still waters whose surface mirrors the heavens. A breeze stirs, and ripples dance like whispered promises. In the hush, every worry is drawn out, each anxious thought settles, and the current reflects the peace that flows from the shepherd's hand. In that silent communion, we recognize how often we have drunk from wells of our own making, bitter with striving, shallow with doubt. Here, in waters deep and clear, we find our souls refreshed. The shepherd does not simply show us the way. He becomes the way, carrying us to springs of living water that never run dry. And yet, the journey does not always rise to sunlit heights. There comes a turning in the path, where shadows lengthen and the valley's mouth yawns wide. The mockery of darkness tempts us to retreat, to question the road we tread. But even here, the shepherd walks before us. His rod becomes a beacon against the gloom, his staff a promise that we will not stray. Though the walls of shadow press close, they cannot extinguish the shepherd's light. With each step, we learn that fear loses its power when confronted by presence. The valley's chill may bite, but the warmth of divine companionship sustains us. Emerging from the shadows, our guide leads us to a table set in the presence of our foes. Doubt may linger at the edges, where hidden threats crouch and enemies spy, yet we find ourselves feasting on abundance. Bread breaks beneath our fingers, wine glistens in our glasses, and even the hardest heart is softened by this feast of grace. No longer do we gather crumbs from chaos. We dine at a banquet of peace. The table itself becomes a sanctuary, draped in the shepherd's faithfulness. Our enemies watch in bewilderment as fear gives way to confidence, and scarcity is overwhelmed by an overflowing cup. Then comes the anointing, a moment both intimate and transcendent. Oil spills warm and fragrant as it coats the head of the one who has been chosen. In that sacred gesture, we feel the sealing of a covenant, a promise that our lives are marked not for despair, but for purpose. The oil glows like dawn on skin, a reminder that even in our frailty, we bear the imprint of divine favor. And as the cup overflows, it whispers of a joy that cannot be contained, a love that pours out in abundance until every crevice of our hearts runs full. Surrounded by such lavish care, our voices rise in gratitude. Songs of praise echo across the hills, carried on wings of thanksgiving. Each note weaves into the psalmist's ancient refrain. Goodness and mercy have pursued me all the days of my life. We remember the moments when mercy found us in our failing, when goodness surprised us in our wandering. These are not distant memories, but living realities, threads of grace that bind us to the shepherd's provision. And as we lift our eyes, we glimpse the house of the Lord, where we will dwell forever. Its gates open wide to receive the faithful. Yet the journey cannot rest indefinitely at the table's edge. A subtle stirring calls us onward, back along the path toward new revelations of grace. The shepherd beckons and we rise, hearts lightened and spirits enlivened. Each step now carries the echo of past provisions, the taste of still waters, the warmth of oil's anointing. We move forward with renewed confidence, knowing that the shepherd's care is not a single gift, but an unbroken stream, flowing from one moment of grace to the next. As we travel, the world beyond the pasture unfolds. Hills rise and fall, rivers carve canyons through stone, and forests murmur with ancient secrets. Along the way, we encounter fellow travelers whose eyes reflect the same longing we bear, a desire for peace, an ache for hope. To each, we share the psalm's refrain, not as a litany to be memorized, but as an invitation to step into the pasture, to taste the waters, to rest beneath the wings of the Almighty. Stories intertwine, and soon we are a company bound by shared journeying, discovering that the shepherd's flock is vast and diverse, yet all are led by the same voice, The path leads us to a quiet hill where olives grow twisted by time, their silver leaves glinting in the sun. Here, the shepherd invites us to linger in contemplative silence. We recall the valley's shadows and the table's abundance, learning that life's heart beats between both. In moments of scarcity, we cling to the certainty of provision. In times of plenty, we remember the shepherd's gentleness. In silence, we hear the cadence of a voice that calls us not to journey alone, but in communion, with him and with one another. Veering off the beaten track, we find a rocky spring that bubbles forth despite the arid earth. The shepherd kneels to scoop the water, offering a drink to the weary. As it washes over our hands, we are reminded that grace flows where we least expect it. Even in places that seem barren, the shepherd's touch can summon life. Our hearts swell with wonder, for every moment of provision bears witness to a faithfulness that never fails. In that humble spring, we see a microcosm of the larger song. Green pastures emerge in deserts when the shepherd's footsteps pass by. Continuing down the slope, we enter a glade where wildflowers bloom in riotous color. Their petals open like praises, offering beauty without expectation. Here, we learn that joy is not a reward for our striving, but a gift freely given. The shepherd moves among the blooms, bending to examine each one, as if every petal holds a message for our souls. We learn to see ourselves in that tenderness. Each life, each story, each heart, precious and known. As afternoon light deepens into gold, our journey reaches a vantage point overlooking a tranquil lake. Its surface is a mirror to the heavens, reflecting cloud and sky in perfect harmony. We sit at the water's edge, the shepherd's presence enveloping us as the day wanes. In this moment, the words of the psalm swell within. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. There is no better place to dwell than in the assurance that mercy pursues us, that love trails behind like faithful companions, and that every tomorrow holds a promise of his presence. Our hearts now prepared, we stand once more at the threshold of the valley, not with fear, but with the confidence that darkness cannot overcome the light we carry. The shepherd's staff rests easy in our hands, as if it, too, has become part of us, ready to guide, to steady, to defend. Though the shadows loom, they are but passages between pasture and table, between memory and promise. Each valley is traversed in his company, each high place reached by his leading. With daylight fading, we turn our eyes toward the horizon where shepherds' lamps glow like stars. They beckon us on, whispering of gatherings to come, of new chapters in the psalm's unfolding tale. And so, as shadows lengthen and a hush falls over the landscape, we prepare to continue the story, rooted in ancient song, yet alive in our every step. The table waits, the oil stands ready, and the waters flow ever onward. In the next fragment of our journey, we will walk through seasons of trial and triumph, of lament and praise, discovering how the shepherd's care transforms the valleys into gateways of grace. In this main part, we have walked beside still waters, feasted in the presence of foes, and found anointing in unlikely places. We have learned that rest, refreshment, and restoration emerge in the shepherd's hands in ways both gentle and profound. As twilight deepens, our hearts echo the psalm's promise, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And though the night is near, we know that morning's light is already rising in his steadfast love. With that assurance warming our souls, we step forward into the gathering dusk, ready to continue the journey in the next unfolding of the psalm's eternal song. As the first stars emerge in twilight sky, we press onward, guided by the faint glow of the shepherd's lamp. The path dips into a narrow gorge, its walls rising steep and rugged on either side. Here, the psalm reminds us that even when the earth gives way and mountains tumble into the sea, our refuge remains secure. For as it is written in Psalm 46, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. In this canyon of uncertainty, wind whistles through cracks in the stone, echoing our unspoken fears. Yet, with each step, we recall the psalmist's declaration that though waters roar and mountains quake, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. So we listen for that gentle current beneath the roar, trusting that even here, amid the crags and shadows, life-giving waters flow unseen. The gorge widens into a plateau where the air is still, charged with anticipation. Around us, the remnant of ancient battlements stand sentinel, stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. In their silent vigil, they speak of wars long ended, of kingdoms that rose and fell like the ebbing tides. The psalmist's words come alive. He makes war cease at the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. We imagine those ancient weapons melting in a fire no sword can withstand, for the voice of the Lord Almighty commands peace. As we tread these hallowed stones, the weight of history presses upon us, yet it does not crush, for it testifies to a power that transcends time and turmoil. A gentle breeze stirs a cluster of wild grasses at our feet, sending them swaying like a sea of green. It is as though the earth itself breathes a prayer of praise, echoing the psalmist's invitation to be still and know that I am God. We close our eyes for a moment, letting the wind softly wash over us, drawing our spirits into a place of stillness where anxiety cannot find purchase. In the sacred hush, every clamor fades, and we stand firmly on the knowledge that the Lord Almighty is with us, and that the God of Jacob remains our fortress. The sun descends toward the horizon as we continue, leaving long shadows that stretch across the land. Ahead, a narrow bridge spans a deep fissure, its wooden planks worn but true. Below, the chasm yawns dark and foreboding. Fear whispers that this crossing may be our undoing. Yet we remember how the psalmist proclaimed that the Lord's rod and staff bring comfort even in the darkest valley. Trusting that same comfort, we step onto the bridge, each plank creaking underfoot, and feel the shepherd's presence steady us. With each careful footfall, we grow more certain that even the most precarious paths can be traversed when guided by a faithful hand. On the far side of the bridge, the landscape transforms into a lush forest, filtered sunlight dancing through a canopy of ancient oaks and cedars. Here, the air is cool and fragrant with the scent of pine and earth. Moss carpets the ground, muffling our footsteps, and the forest seems to breathe around us. In this cathedral of trees, we sense the whisper of Psalm 91, where the psalmist finds refuge beneath the wings of the Almighty. We look up at the leafy vault above, envisioning feathers outstretched in gentle protection, knowing that under such shelter, no harm will overtake us. We follow a narrow game trail that winds deeper into the wood, the underbrush brushing our legs softly. Occasional bird song punctuates the quiet, and distant water murmurs like a hidden blessing. At last, we arrive at a clearing where a natural spring bubbles forth from the earth. The water is clear and cold, a stark contrast to the warmth of the afternoon light. Kneeling by its edge, we cup our hands and drink deeply, tasting the promise of life renewed. In that moment, we understand how the psalmist could write of being covered with feathers and finding refuge under wings. This spring, this forest, this very breath of life is a reminder of protection and sustenance that flows from the divine. Refreshed, we rise and continue along a winding ridge that offers vistas of rolling hills and distant valleys. The sun dips lower still, painting clouds in hues of rose and amber. In the hush of evening, we reflect on the journey so far. The green pastures, the still waters, the valley shadows, the fortress's walls, the wings of protection. Each landscape has taught us something essential about divine care, that it comes both in gentle whispers and in resounding declarations, that it meets us in feasts of abundance and in solitary springs, that it both comforts and empowers us to stand firm when fear assails. As twilight deepens, we find ourselves at the base of a great mountain, its summit lost in the gathering dusk. The path zigzags steeply upward, promising a view that may encompass all we have traversed. Yet the climb is daunting, and our legs tremble at the prospect. Doubt seeps in like a chill mist. But then we hear the faint echo of the psalmist's promise. I will lift you up in my hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Encouraged, we place one foot before the other, trusting that the hand that set the mountain in place will uphold us on its flanks. The ascent tests our strength, but also reveals hidden springs of resolve. We pause at ledges where hesitant travelers might falter, but there we find handholds of solid rock, the shepherd's own guides carved into the face of the mountain. Each breath becomes an act of trust, each heartbeat a hymn of reliance. As the stars emerge overhead, the trail narrows until we stand on a wind-swept peak, the world stretched out beneath us like an eternal tapestry. In the vast silence, we lift our gaze to the heavens, remembering how the psalmist declares that his voice can silence wars and his word can transform swords into plowshares. We feel the electric thrill of that promise, that in this life and beyond, the power that sustains the cosmos also sustains our fragile hearts. From this summit, the panorama reveals every pasture we have known, every valley we have crossed, every fortress that sheltered us. We see the river that courses through the city of God, the glinting banners of peace, the silent forest of protection, and the star-strewn path that lies ahead. The night air is cool, yet inside us burns a warmth of promise. We rest on the summit's edge, anchored by the memory of every tender care we have received. As our eyes adjust to the darkness, we perceive a faint glow rising beyond the eastern horizon, the dawn that will soon break. In that moment, we remember how the psalmist spoke of being called at the break of day, of how help arrives not in the fullness of noon alone, but even at the earliest light. We sense that the journey is far from over. The next chapter will carry us through trials and triumphs yet unseen. Descending from the peak, our spirits buoyed, we follow a moonlit path into a vale of wildflowers whose petals glimmer like lanterns in the night. The air hums with the song of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. Here, the boundary between heaven and earth seems to thin, and our souls feel drawn upward by the fragrance and sound. It is as though creation itself joins the psalmist's choir, singing of refuge, of strength, of unending mercy. In this place, fear loses its voice and peace takes its place. Beyond the veil, we encounter a ruined chapel, its walls half collapsed but its altar still standing. Time has brushed away the frescoes, yet the stone bears the scars of countless prayers. We step inside, feet echoing softly on the worn floor. Though the roof has given way to sky, the chapel remains a sanctuary, a testament that even when walls crumble, the heart of worship endures. We kneel at the altar, whispering words not of our own making but drawn from the well of ancient song. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. It is as it is written in Psalm 91, "No terror by night, no arrow by day." Yet we know these promises are woven into the very air we breathe. Light filters down through the broken roof, as if the heavens themselves lean close to hear our prayer. We rise with the psalm's assurance echoing in our hearts, carrying us again into the night. Though the days may be long and the journey fraught, we hold fast to the knowledge that the Lord is our refuge, our shepherd, our fortress, our high tower. Each psalm we have encountered is not a separate melody, but a single symphony of divine devotion, a tapestry where every thread, pasture and fortress, valley and summit, feast and spring, intertwines to reveal the whole of God's care. Beyond the chapel, we emerge onto a gentle slope where fireflies dance like living sparks of hope. We pause, watching their luminous circuit, and sense that they mirror the souls who have found refuge in these words across ages and lands. Each tiny light is a testimony. I have known your goodness. I have found your shelter. And as we stand among them, our own story becomes part of that living testament. With the horizon beginning to blush, we recognize that morning draws near. Yet instead of weariness, we feel anticipation stirring. For we have discovered that the Psalm's promise does not dissolve with the dawn but gains new life. If we say the Lord is our refuge and under his wings we dwell, then every sunrise brings fresh evidence of his faithfulness. The valley's shadows may linger, but they cannot withstand the light that follows. Our path now leads us toward a distant village whose rooftops glow in the coming day's first rays. Smoke coils above chimneys, and the faint hum of waking life drifts through the air. As we approach, we recall how the psalmist invites us to behold the works of the Lord, to see the desolations he has brought to nothing and the peace he has declared. Here, in the ordinary rhythms of work and rest, we glimpse the ongoing fulfillment of that promise. Each hearth warmed, each door opened in welcome, each voice raised in morning prayer becomes a living psalm, an echo of the ancient song that has guided us. Stepping into the village square, we are greeted not by fanfare, but by simple nods and smiles, small gestures that carry the weight of daily grace. We share the psalm's refrain in quiet conversation, not as a recitation, but as the breath of life. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. Those words find root in hearts familiar with struggle, familiar with hope that endures beyond hardship. We discover that the psalm's promise blossoms wherever love is practiced, at kitchen tables, in fields at dawn, in hands lifted in prayer. And so, as the sun rises fully, we continue our journey through these verses, not as distant pilgrims, but as companions bound by a shared path. The next chapter will carry us into seasons of testing and triumph, of lament and praise, where the shepherd's presence transforms every footstep into a dance of faith. But for now, we stand in the morning light, our hearts echoing the Psalm's eternal song, ready to dwell in the house of the Lord forever, and to carry the promise of Psalm 23, 46, and 91 into every corner of our lives. As dawn gives way to morning's full radiance, we pause at the threshold of a new day, hearts still resonating with the echoes of our journey. From the soothing hush of shaded pastures to the thunderous roar of mountain torrents, from the valley's dark embrace to the fortress heights where stars whispered ancient secrets, we have walked in the footsteps of faith. And now, having traced the psalmist's melody from the gentle cadence of "The Lord is my shepherd," to the rallying cry of refuge and strength, to the tender shelter of the Most High, we stand ready to bring our pilgrimage to its close. We begin this final passage not a great tableau or monument, but in the simple turning of a key in a village door. Inside, a humble cottage welcomes us. Warm beams overhead, a patchwork quilt draped across a settle, and a hearth where embers glow softly, red as the promise of God's steadfast love. Here, in the quiet of ordinary life, the Psalm's grand themes find their daily expression. The shepherd's rod and staff, once symbols of guidance across rugged terrain, become the gentle discipline of waking with purpose, of tending the needs of kin and neighbor. The still waters we glimpsed in forest springs manifest in moments of shared laughter around a kitchen table, in the understanding glance between friends, in the solace found in whispered prayers before sleep. Outside, children chase sunbeams across the lawn, their laughter a living psalm of praise. Their carefree delight mirrors the overflowing cup of the anointed head, that place of abundance where joy cannot be contained. We recall how the psalmist spoke of a table prepared in the presence of enemies, oil poured upon the brow, cup overflowing. And now we witness that promise in daily generosity, in open hands sharing bread with those in need, in the abundance of hospitality extended without question. Each act of kindness becomes a stanza in the ongoing song of mercy that follows us all the days of our lives. As midday light warms the cottage walls, we step outside into a world steeped in the psalm's imagery. The garden behind the house blooms riotously, roses and lavender weaving scents of calm, sunflowers turning steadfast faces to the sky. In tending these blooms, we learn the art of patience and the grace of waiting. For just as the shepherd waits beside our beds in the night, he waits beside every seed, every root, coaxing life from the soil. We kneel among the blossoms, hands brushing loosened earth, hearts softened by the understanding that growth often hides in silence. The psalmist's words guide our work. Under his wings we find refuge, and his faithfulness becomes a shield that guards the tender shoots of our becoming. Beyond the garden gate lies a lane that winds upward to a hill, crowned by an ancient oak. Its branches spread wide, a living cathedral embracing sky and land. We ascend the path, footprints echoing those of countless travelers before us, each one seeking solace, each one bearing scars of longing. Reaching the summit, we stand beneath the oak's boughs, where shafts of sunlight pierce the canopy, painting the ground in shifting patterns of light and shade. In that interplay we perceive the psalm's twin truths, that in life's brightest moments we must remain humble, and in its darkest, we must cling to the promise that light endures. Leaning against the oak's sturdy trunk, we close our eyes and breathe in the timeless hush. We recall the river whose streams make glad the city of God, envisioning the water's gentle rush over stone. The oak's roots, plunging deep into the earth, remind us of the river's hidden sources, invisible yet inexhaustible, such as the depth of divine provision, unseen foundation supporting every blessing. And as the breeze stirs the leaves overhead, we feel the psalm's call to be still and know that he is God. In that sacred stillness, fear dissolves, and our spirits rest in unspoken trust. Minute by minute, the sun arcs across the sky, and shadows shift beneath the oak. We rise and resume our journey, bidding farewell to the hilltop's quiet strength. Below, the village spreads out before us, smoke rising from chimneys, laundry drifting in the breeze, children's voices echoing from courtyards. In these details of everyday life, we perceive fulfillment of the psalm's promise, that in all places, both grand and humble, God's presence abides. The refuge that lifted empires and silenced wars now shelters a simple cottage. The fortress that shook when nations clashed now stands in every heart that chooses to trust. Our path carries us onward to a sunlit valley where the ruins of an old monastery stand half hidden among wildflowers. Moss-clad stones and broken arches bear witness to centuries of prayer. We wander through this hallowed ruin, footsteps gentle on weathered tiles. Once, monastic voices echoed through these halls. Chants of praise at dawn, readings of sacred texts by candlelight. Now, silence reigns, yet the sacred hush seems to pulse with memory. We sense the quivering presence of those who sought refuge here, who found strength amid austerity, who knew that the Lord would preserve them through each trial. Kneeling on the cool stone floor, we place our hands upon the ancient altar, tracing the grooves worn by generations of seekers. In that tactile connection, we feel a continuum of faith, how every prayer offered, every tear shed, every song of thanksgiving has woven itself into the tapestry of God's unfolding story. We lift our voices in quiet song, not in solemn liturgy, but with a sincerity of hearts that have known both sorrow and joy. Our song is a testament that though walls crumble and melodies fade, the melody of mercy endures, leaving the monastery in our wake. We follow a path that skirts a clear mountain stream. Its waters babble over smooth stones, scattering sunlit droplets like sparks of joy. We pause to splash cool water on our faces, its chill a bracing reminder of the living spring promised in Psalm 46. Here, too, we see the interplay of power and gentleness. The stream carves canyons through rock, yet caresses every pebble in its course. Such is a nature of divine strength. Invincible yet tender, commanding yet compassionate. Our footsteps lead us to a wide meadow where sheep graze under the watchful eye of a lone shepherd. He stands among them, staff in hand, surveying his flock with serene attentiveness. In that pastoral tableau, our journey's beginning and end converge. We draw near, not as distant observers, but as companions welcomed into the fold. The shepherd's glance meets ours, and in that look we recognize the gaze of the one who knows us by name. There is no need for words here. The silence speaks of abiding care. In the simple act of watching over the flock, the shepherd embodies the psalm's promise that we shall fear no evil, for he goes before us. As we step into the meadow, the lambs raise their heads, bleating softly, and the sheep shift in curious acknowledgement. We follow the shepherd to a sun-warmed rock beside the stream, where he offers us bread and water. We eat slowly, tasting the grains of grain and the purity of the water, aware that no gift is small when it springs from unfailing love. Around us, the meadow hums with life, bees droning among wild thyme, swallows diving for insects, butterflies drifting from blossom to blossom. It is a living chorus echoing the psalm's refrain, weaving every creature into the tapestry of divine care. After this feast, the shepherd beckons us to walk with him along the stream's winding path. We rise, refreshed not only in body but in spirit, ready for the final leg of our pilgrimage. Our pace is unhurried, each step a prayer of gratitude. We recall how the psalmist taught that mercy and goodness pursue us, a truth made flesh in every offering of bread, in every shared moment of fellowship, in every breath of wind that stirs the leaves. The path leads us back toward the village square, where the day's bustle has given way to the slow rhythms of evening. Lanterns ignite in windows, and the soft glow guides wanderers home. We join the flow of people returning to hearth and home, feeling ourselves part of a living psalm, each life a note in the grand harmony of grace. In that gathering dusk, we sense the words of the final verse settle into our souls. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As night deepens, we find ourselves once again beneath the ancient oak on the hill, now silhouetted against a canopy of stars. We lie upon the grass, eyes searching the heavens, tracing constellations that have inspired wonder since the psalmist's day. In the vast expanse of sky, we glimpse the infinity of divine love, beyond measure, beyond end. The shepherd's staff and the fortress walls dissolve into the starlight, reminding us that every earthly symbol points toward a greater reality. Under this glittering dome, we rest in the certainty that the same voice that calmed seas and guided flocks speaks still, calling us to trust, to hope, to love. In these final moments of our journey, we offer one last prayer, not a formal liturgy, but a breath drawn deep from the reservoir of faith. We pray in the language of our hearts. For those who wander in deserts of despair, that they might find green pastures. For those trembling in valleys of darkness, that they might sense the shepherd's rod and staff. For those besieged by storms of fear, that they might hear the command to be still. For every soul longing for refuge, that they might rest under the shadow of the Almighty. Our voices mingle with the night breeze, carrying our intercession to the one who hears beyond words. As sleep draws near, we rise and journey back down the hill along a path illuminated by fireflies, a final corridor of light guiding us home. In our mind's eyes, we carry the memory of every landscape we traversed, meadow and forest, valley and summit, stream and village. Each scene is a parable of divine care, each moment a revelation of unfailing presence. And though the pilgrimage ends here, its lessons endure, that the shepherd leads, the fortress stands, the wings shelter, and mercy follows. Entering the cottage once more, we settle beside the hearth, where embers glow like the watchful eyes of angels. We close our eyes, letting the day's journey fold into the tapestry of memory. The psalm's promise becomes our lullaby, its melody weaving through dreams. I shall lack nothing. I shall fear no evil. I shall dwell in God's house forever. And as sleep claims us, we rest secure in the knowledge that tomorrow we will awaken to pasture and stream anew, to feasts of grace, to springs of life, and to the shepherd whose love knows no end. Thus concludes our journey through the verdant fields and towering heights of Psalm 23, through the fortress and refuge of Psalm 46, and under the sheltering wings of Psalm 91. Yet the story does not end here. It lives on in every heart that embraces these truths, in every life guided by their light. May this conclusion be not a terminus but a threshold, a place from which each one of us continues to walk, trusting in the shepherd's voice, finding strength and refuge, and resting under the shadow of the Almighty, now and always. Amen.